First, the story of the Attorney-General and the priest. One of the most senior lawmakers in the country is tonight accused of making derogatory comments about a woman who alleges that she was abused as a child by a priest. Until last year, New South Wales Attorney-General Greg Smith had a long association with his one-time Catholic priest Finian Egan, even praising him in Parliament. That appears to have ended sometime after police began investigating allegations from 5 people that Finian Egan had abused them as children. Now 7:30 has been shown evidence suggesting the Attorney-General made insulting comments about one of Finian Egan's accusers, allegedly branding the child sex victim just after money from the church. Tim Palmer reports.
There was nowhere that was safe for me. I wasn't safe anywhere. The abuse started when I was in the later years of primary school.
Father Finian Egan's more than 50 years as a priest took him to at least half a dozen churches in and around Sydney. But the priest's service in the Catholic Church came to an end when a number of women came forward to accuse him of abusing them when they were children.
I just tried to stop him from touching my breasts, to show him that that's not where I want his hands, without saying anything, because he was... Priests are one step down from God.
Within weeks of 7:30 airing a series of stories in 2010 on Finian Egan, at least 5 people had gone to police and a widespread investigation was underway. But nearly 2 years later, the priest hasn't been arrested or charged.
Well, the wait's been absolutely horrendous. It's been really traumatic. The statements with the police were finalised in 2010. We've been told that the case is currently on the DPP's desk, but it's been on the DPP's desk for about months now. They keep telling us they're just waiting for a signature. So to me, it's beyond me how it could be so long. You know, the case has been investigated. It's very clear, the evidence is there from all of the witnesses. I don't understand why he hasn't been charged.
Finian Egan has always maintained his innocence. As the case dragged on, questions were raised about the alleged sex offender's long-time association with the man who's now Attorney-General, Greg Smith. Mr Smith and Finian Egan go back some years, and when Greg Smith was elected to Parliament 5 years ago, he cited Finian Egan's influence in his maiden speech to Parliament.
That's a Derek's father, Finian Egan, charmed us with his Irish wit and his pastorly devotion to his flock.
There are other connections to Greg Smith's office. Damien Tudhope is now the Attorney-General's Chief of Staff. He too knows Finian Egan well. He attended the priest's church and, as a solicitor, defended him against sexual abuse allegations. The ABC does not suggest that either Greg Smith or Damien Tudhope have interfered with the potential prosecution of Finian Egan. But 7:30 can reveal documents that describe discussions the Attorney-General had about the Egan matter. Last year, one of the alleged victims, Nikki Wells, spoke to another Catholic priest about her frustration at the delay. That priest, who the ABC has agreed not to name, says he then met Attorney-General Greg Smith last July. After that meeting, the priest detailed his version of what was said in an email back to Nikki Wells, an email the ABC has obtained. The priest wrote,
"I was with Greg Smith the other day and I raised your case. He commented that you were just trying to get $1 million from the church."
I was horrified. I was completely horrified that the chief lawmaker in the state could make a comment on an open criminal matter, for a start, but secondly that he could pass judgment on someone he doesn't even know, and you know, just disbelief about the whole matter, that our Attorney-General could speak so publicly about me and my case and a criminal matter. Horrified.
There is, for me, no political excuse for the Attorney-General of the day making derogatory comments about a victim when that matter is before the DPP for potential sexual abuse charges.
The ABC asked the Attorney-General if the priest's email description of the meeting and what was said was correct. In response, Greg Smith issued a statement saying,
"The Attorney-General recalls no such conversation and notes that 730 has failed to provide any details which would help his recall. He says he would never suggest any victim of sexual abuse was simply motivated by a desire to claim a financial payout."
Against that, the priest said today he did meet Greg Smith. They discussed Nikki Wells, and the email remains his account of what was said. At the time Nikki Wells received the priest's email detailing the alleged comment by Greg Smith, she wrote back angrily.
Does he really think we're all lying? What kind of man says things like that about victims of abuse? He really should not be commenting on any case in these circumstances, let alone the character of a witness.
Clearly he thinks I'm a liar, and clearly he thinks other witnesses and other victims are lying as well about it, because I'm not the only victim in this matter. There's several of us, and there's probably a lot that haven't even come forward yet. But a clear lack of empathy and devastating unprofessionalism.
Beyond the alleged comment that Nikki Wells was just after money, the email raises other questions. In fact, Nikki Wells had discussed a $1 million figure with the church, not for herself, but as a loan for a charity she was running to care for survivors of childhood abuse. She was shocked that the Attorney-General would know anything about that $1 million figure, something she'd raised only with senior churchmen, and she said so in her email back to the priest. The priest replied,
This is what he had heard, and that concerns me where this had come from. He is well connected within the church. He seems to know all the hierarchy, much more in the know than I am.
Well, in my dealings with him on this issue, it's an attorney that's more likely to defend the church than get out and defend the victims.
The email raises several serious questions for the Attorney-General. Why was he discussing an ongoing criminal investigation with an outside party? Why did he choose to discuss it with a priest from the same church as the alleged sex offender? And why did he apparently denigrate the alleged victim of a childhood sexual offence? David Shoebridge put a series of questions to Greg Smith on notice in Parliament. Among them, he asked the attorney whether he'd had any communication with anyone beyond the DPP regarding the Finian Egan case. But in his answers, Greg Smith did not address that issue at all, only stating that his office hadn't been in contact with the DPP about it.
It's a remarkable lack of candour. It was a very specific question, capable of a very precise answer, and we simply did that. If the half of the answer you don't give is the core of the information, you've got to ask whether or not that is misleading the person asking the question.
Pathetic. His response was pathetic. And, you know, the government shouldn't allow him to be able to respond to those questions. They were specific questions. He hasn't responded. He's answered 5 questions in one line. He's completely evasive. Why is he being so evasive? Why isn't he answering the questions?
Tim Palmer with that report.